Indolent employees who tinker on their computers be dismissed. To put it mildly, James Smith, the company's 59-year-old new CEO, is incompetent. He needs assistance to make copies because he is so digitally illiterate. Naturally, I believe he's the worst, but so does everyone else. He branded me a lazy thief without even attempting to grasp the nature of my profession as an engineer. James arbitrarily changed the company's policies, which made working there intolerable. I gave up trying to follow him and did as he asked, resigning. He called me nonstop the day after I resigned. It appears that the management system I designed contained a mistake. I handed him a condition in exchange for his command to correct it. Jason Williams, the company's lone system engineer, is 42 years old and in charge of the management system. Being a tiny company, we are never fully staffed. Although we appreciate requests from clients, we are always working overtime due to a staffing shortage. I intended to speak with James about expanding our recruiting in the near future. But the sales department keeps piling work on me as if to obstruct me. Incorporate this choice. The deadline has accelerated, so move quickly. They press their demands without thinking about how much it will cost me. There were a lot of engineers at the company when I started. I was just getting started, copying my seniors, but before I realized it, everyone had left, leaving me alone. Having to do everything by yourself was more taxing than the loneliness of losing coworkers. We were told that the CEO would be replaced at this time. The outgoing CEO, James Smith, a 59-year-old vice president, was leaving his position due to age. "Hello, I'm James Smith, the new CEO," James said as he arrived at our meeting this morning. "Let's put forth a lot of effort to expand this business." Although I was taken off by his patronizing tone, I had hoped that a new CEO would bring in more engineers. I went over to talk to him about it right away. "James, I have something to discuss." "Who are you?" He gave me a wary glance. It was surprising that, despite our infrequent encounters, he had not recognized me after more than a decade of working for the company. "Jason Williams, the engineer, is who I am. Have you overlooked it?" "Technician. Is there such a department even here?" James glanced up, seemingly lost in contemplation, his expression bewildered. The fact that he was really unaware of the engineering department was alarming. "My task has been to create our management system. Do you truly not know who I am?" "I've always focused on sales, so I know nothing about computers." James forgot about me as the VP since he was so busy helping the CEO and traveling. Even though I felt ignored, I continued with my request. "I'm the sole engineer here right now. If this keeps up, efficiency will suffer and the workload will become excessive. Is it possible for us to hire extra employees?" I told James how desperate I was, but he scowled and shook his head. "My former CEO gave me the order to boost earnings. Adding more employees would only drive up labor expenses. But if we hire even one more engineer, we can handle more work." I was rejected, but I was determined not to give up and kept pleading. James, however, waved his hand dismissively, clearly unhappy. "Enough is enough. Since I recently took over, I'm too busy. We'll talk about this later." He clumped back to his office after that. To be fair, he had recently assumed the role of CEO, and he must have felt a great deal of responsibility having been given the firm by his predecessor. I made the decision to wait and come up to him once he had become comfortable. But it soon became apparent that James was incapable of operating a computer or a copier correctly. He summoned me to his office one day and said, "My computer is broken. Make it right." Nothing was touched by me. It simply broke by itself. Make it right. I never even got the chance to question because he insisted it wasn't his fault. There was nothing happening when you pressed keys on the black desktop screen. Observe? I detest computers because of this. They simply snap without prior notice. Okay, let me take a look. I looked for any peripheral problems. I identified the issue in less than a minute. Peering beneath James's feet, I noticed a cable disconnected from the outlet. The electricity must have been mistakenly turned off by kicking it. I showed it to him after picking it up. Look, it was just unplugged. When I plugged it back in, the computer functioned flawlessly, and the power came back promptly. When James realized it was his error, his eyes grew wide. If it's fixed, you can leave this place. Return to your work now. I was kicked out of his office, and as I looked down the corridor at a garbage can, I instantly remembered his face and instinctively kicked it. James was obviously quite technologically illiterate and had no familiarity with computers. How, therefore, did he work and advance in his career? He used to be a salesperson. Since he used outside sales to meet his quotas in his earlier years, he frequently claimed that office labor involving computers belonged on his subordinates' shoulders. James called me over one other day, and it turned out he needed some documents copied. For me, making copies is something you can do quickly on your own. Cease talking. I don't get along with the newest copiers. Simply carry it out. With some reluctance, I took the documents he handed me and stood in front of the copier. I sighed deeply to be called for such insignificant activities, especially during working hours. Mr. VP, why don't you ask someone else? You called me, but why? As I was putting the documents into the copier, I questioned James. He had a red pen tucked behind his ear and was reading a newspaper about racing. Since you appear to be the least busy, nobody spends their entire day typing on a computer except for you. What? I could not disguise my bewilderment at his reply. Developing the company's security software and management system is my responsibility. I was consistently able to make deadlines even with the sales department's outrageous demands. We've stayed clear of client complaints and kept the company's good name because of my efforts. However, it was startling that James, the CEO, didn't comprehend what I'd done. Are the copies done? Indeed, it's finished. You may now proceed. James accepted the original and the copies I had taken from the copier and placed them on his desk, but he didn't even glance at them. Instead, he made a chin gesture. I exited his office after making sure my duty was completed. A coworker I frequently see in the corridor sympathized with me when I told him about James' phoning. The CEO has been forcing other staff members to use computers to handle data and generate copies. Really, a CEO's poor technological skills are a concern. It appeared that everyone knew how incompetent James was, so I wasn't the only one having trouble. We both laughed till we were exhausted. We believed that with a new CEO, things would improve. Yes, this CEO isn't as good as the last one. We joked our way out of there, and I returned to my work. Everyone was aware of James' incapacity and hoped he would be replaced soon, but our desires were unlikely to come true. James exacerbated the situation. Remote work is not necessary. Being a home worker is basically being indolent. Even in the midst of a cyclone, everyone needs to enter. Our organization had previously used remote work amid a large viral outbreak. For a while, I worked from home, and I was surprised at how convenient it was to not have to travel. However, James thought that working from home was a sign of laziness and mandated that everyone report to work every day, no matter what. We were vehemently against this. Why are you giving up your remote job? Some youths are working from home while wearing pajamas, according to what I saw on TV. Such apathy won't be tolerated in our organization. James was attempting to alter corporate policies in light of television programming. The fact that his capricious choices were making our load heavier was intolerable. I have 3 small kids, a childbearing employee then said. I was able to take care of them when they were ill and finish my work because of remote employment. Give the children to somebody else. Invest in a nanny or similar. I don't make enough money to hire a nanny. This infuriated James, who bellowed, "Low pay is due to your lack of ability. Please don't hold me responsible." James modified policies at will and disregarded all employee appeals after that. Everyone distrusted him, myself included, because of his self-serving actions. I started to worry that, in order to protect myself, I might need to quit this company if things went any worse. I began to bring specific things from the office everywhere I went. Though I hope I'd never use them, I had them just in case. I'm struggling to meet deadlines at work today and am experiencing discomfort. I was hoping to wrap up on time and had a lovely Friday, but yesterday, right before I left, a salesperson gave me extra stuff to do. They added, "Make sure the deadline stays the same," to their immediate agreement to a client's request for additional features, leaving me to work late as everyone else went home. Why does this always end up falling on me? Damn it. I have to work overtime on Friday. Even if my working hours increased, I would still receive overtime money, so I complained but refrained from protesting. That was bearable when you considered the additional compensation. My primary motivation for remaining at this firm is their overtime compensation. Friends who are engineers at other businesses complain about having to work from home and not getting paid overtime or being prohibited from working overtime. My firm might still be decent in comparison to them. But with James's recent policy changes, their future was in doubt. The first pay period after James took over as CEO was next week. This was the day I had been waiting for, my reward for working so much extra. When payday finally arrived, pay slips were given out. Excited, I looked up my amount and was taken aback. Why is it lower than it was previously? Glancing around, I noticed workers contentedly debating how they would use their salary. I went straight to the CEO's office because I was upset that my pay stub did not reflect any overtime pay. But before I faced James, I made sure I looked through the things I was carrying. "James, why is there no overtime pay on my slip?" I yelled at him, but he was apathetically reading the newspaper. I took the paper from him because I was irritated by his lack of interest, which caused him to become agitated. "Because you're just slacking off." He reclaimed the newspaper from my grasp. "You stay late every day just to get overtime pay, right?" I was enraged by his ignorance and got goosebumps from his arrogant expression. "Pardon me, but I put in extra hours to make sure that my clients are happy. Our business excels in offering a safe management method. You're working late because you're slow at your job." His derisive chuckle enraged me even more. "Let's say for argument's sake that I'm at fault, but legally, you must pay overtime." I gave a solid pushback, but James only chuckled at me, seemingly unaffected. "What occurs if I fail to compensate a subpar worker? Do you think I'll go to jail?" "Maybe not arrested, but your reputation and the company's will surely suffer." He scowled when he heard this. "So please review my overtime pay immediately." I pounded his desk with my pay stub. If I persisted this far, I figured he would grudgingly comply. I wouldn't mind if they paid me fairly, even though there might be conflict between us. It would be resolved with just remuneration. However, what he said next gave me no hope at all. "There's no money to pay someone who plays around on the company's dime." "How come?" I was taken aback by his response and left stunned. He did not intend to understand, even though he was putting in extra hours for the benefit of the company. "You consider yourself an engineer, but in reality, you're simply a computer geek. Your work may be done by anyone in another department." "What? The mechanism of our business is under my control." However, James grimaced as he got up from his chair and gestured toward me. "You are fired, you lazy thief, playing on the computer." I felt all of my feelings for the company disappear at that very instant. My labor seemed like play to him. Who would follow a CEO that doesn't know what his people do for a living or doesn't pay them properly? "I appreciate everything that you have done. Farewell." I nodded to James while picking up my pay stub. "Wait, are you really okay with being fired?" It seems that my cool acceptance surprised him. "I'll stay through the month to complete the handover." I then departed from his office. After that, I took some time to prepare to quit the company where I had worked for more than 10 years and to transfer my responsibilities to reliable colleagues. On my last day, my coworkers gave me a flower and said goodbye, even though they were sad to see me depart. Although it was bittersweet to bid James farewell, I was disappointed not to get paid what was due to me. I felt bad that I hadn't pressed for my overtime compensation. However, my phone started ringing nonstop the day I resigned. I disregarded the unsettling feeling of seeing an unknown number phoning since the morning. But after 10 calls, I gave up and decided to answer just to vent my frustration. Stop being so persistent. Whoa, don't yell at me. I was surprised to see it was James. James, what do you want? Come to the office right now. He was hurrying me and sounded desperate. Why? I take it that I'm no longer needed there. Just go quickly. According to your coworkers, they require you. It appeared like not only James, but also the other staff members were in a panic. I picked up my luggage and made my way to the office, worried about them. Upon my arrival, I discovered that everyone was engrossed in their laptops and was overloaded with phone calls. Jason, all the staff turned to face me at once as soon as they saw me. Jason, please lend a hand. What took place? I requested them to explain from the beginning after calming them down. The problem surfaced this morning, one day following my resignation. The person I had given the task of handling the handover to attempted to resolve a problem that had arisen in the management system. Important data, such as client information and thorough product records, are stored in the management system. The company would suffer greatly if this information was leaked and utilized improperly. If handled calmly, the issue could have been resolved swiftly, but James's interference made things worse. An error that wasn't addressed in the handbook happened when he attempted to solve it himself, and only I was able to fix it. There was a chance that data would leak if the problem wasn't fixed, which would seriously erode customer confidence. Every employee was manually moving customer data to a different file in order to stop this. James arrived as I was wrapping up my explanation of the circumstances. You're here, I see. I mean, this is beyond anyone else's capabilities. Quickly fix the computer. Asking someone who has resigned for assistance is awkward, but we don't have anyone else to turn to. Jason, please assist us. I paused to consider my options before responding. Then I'll demand compensation for wrongful termination and my unpaid overtime, in response to pleas for assistance from James and the staff. I extended my hand and gave James a fierce look. After firing me, it's convenient to ask for assistance. Given that the firing was your fault, I'm requesting $10,000 in payment. James became visibly agitated and started to perspire. Everyone in the office looked at him. Why should I give you money? He insisted that I was slacking off and that I had been disobeying my responsibilities. I never took a break. We would have gotten complaints if I had been careless. The sales staff in the corner of the room looked aside nervously when I glanced at them. They simply accepted the expectations of the client and gave me all of the job. Even though I managed deliveries for multiple businesses on my own, I never had any complaints. That's how much I valued my work. You made a mistake in terminating me. How come? You got yourself into this predicament due to your lack of engineering comprehension. With all eyes on him, James felt a sense of terror. I'll fix the problem. Please accept the compensation and apologize for calling me lazy. I hoped that with this ultimatum, he would at last give in. If he did, I could assist the staff right away. But sleazy thief. I never stated that. He mocked me with a sly grin. Stop painting me as the villain. I see. So you're still attempting to avoid accountability. His failure to own up to his deeds made me sigh. Unpaid overtime is a legal issue, as I told you. Only if it is accurate. Have any evidence? James gave me a sly little smile. The fact that he believed I was bluffing gave him confidence. However, there was something in my shoe that could destroy that self-assurance. Yes, I have evidence. What? I reached inside my purse for a sound recorder. I brought it to work in case something happened, and kept it in my suit pocket to record right away if necessary when I thought about moving jobs. I did, of course, videotape the exchange I had with James the day he dismissed me. He cocked his head at the voice recorder I showed him. "What is that? An outdated mobile phone?" This voice recorder is contemporary. With a single button press, conversations can be recorded. I pushed play after turning up the volume. The staff started whispering as James and I continued our talk. James's face became pale as he heard his voice and fixed his gaze on the voice recorder. James's remarks, "You are fired, you lazy thief," closed the tape. I could hear the staff whispering to me as I was using the computer. "That is very bad. Jason is a very skilled engineer. Using a computer to play games? The CEO reads newspapers about horse racing all day long." They gave James a really disdainful stare. Talking his way out of this was not an option. I chose to exert even more pressure. I pulled a stack of papers out of my backpack and showed James. "These are my time card printouts. They make my working hours and overtime quite evident. I'm able to sue you and turn these in to the Labor Standards Office. The office would look into the matter and the business would be closely examined if it turned out that he wasn't paying overtime. This would definitely reveal James's incapacity as a CEO. James was sweating a lot and wasn't sure what to do. Whatever happens to the company, I don't care. Remember that I was fired." I grinned, and the staff gathered around James. "James, kindly comply with Jason's requests. Things will only get worse if we don't find a solution to this problem." Under pressure from the staff, James hesitantly mumbled, "Fine. Simply wait a little while." He hurried to the local bank and gave me the unpaid overtime and compensation, confirming that the sum was approximately $112,000 in total. I put it in my pocket when James seized my arm. "I fulfilled your requests. Now, swiftly fix the system." I got it. I swiftly opened the administration screen after turning on the machine and found the issue. It was quickly fixed by me. The management system was back up in a matter of minutes, and I had a conversation with the worker who was in charge of the transfer. The mistake is easily correctable. Later, I'll email you the instructions. "Wonderful. Thank you so much," the staff exclaimed. "Jason is just remarkable. In an instant, he fixed what no one else could." Although I'm accustomed to handling these situations, I was a little uncomfortable to get such high compliments. Is Jason really that good? I wonder. He is, of course, the only engineer we have. With their eyes wide and fingers in their mouths, they appeared astonished. Maybe James even came to understand the value of an engineer in the end. But after receiving my pay, I felt that my work here was finished. I'm departing now that my task is done. Kindly stop making calls at all. James gave me a melancholy glance. You are no longer useful to me. Leave now. The worker's expressions hardened as he spat out these comments, gazing at him with bitterness. I spoke something to them before I left. Don't hold your complaints inside. Share them with others. Speaking up is important sometimes. I praised them and departed from the organization. Later on, I was looking for a new career and helping a friend with their work. Seek employment in my 40s. In my 40s, it was difficult to find a new career, but thanks to my friend's connections, I had several opportunities. I was optimistic that the move would go well until I got an unexpected message from an old coworker. Remarkably, following my departure from the company, James was voted out at the shareholders' meeting. The main stockholders were notified about the system issues by someone. They also brought up James's dereliction of duty, the Labor Standards Office's investigation, and a petition signed by every worker calling for his dismissal. Strong disagreement to James's decision to eject me after I settled the dispute was the driving cause for the petition. James was fired as a result of the staff's lack of faith in him. In addition, any executive who backed James was fired. Thus, the management team was essentially replaced. Now, the staff wanted to put me forward for the next success. I was quite aback to learn this from a former coworker. The CEO. Me? Not at all. It is not possible for a former employee to assume that position. I declined right away, but everyone else in the office felt that I was the best person to make the decision. Surprisingly, all of the stockholders thought positively of my efforts to keep the company afloat during the crisis. But I'm only an engineer. The system issue was limited to my area of competence. I am not cut out to be the CEO. Although I was flattered to receive compliments, I graciously turned down the employee's offer. However, the workers begged me to come back to the company the following day when they visited my home. Jason, you made several attempts to discuss upholding the company's policies with James through negotiation. We can only rely on you to be our leader. Please, let's resume our collaboration. Their cries for help nearly won me over. I appreciate you coming here, but I was ready to say no when one of the staff members announced that James had left the organization. This is our opportunity to make the workplace better. Yes, James lost his job. It was because I didn't want to follow James that I took my firing. I could improve the working atmosphere now that he was no longer there and I had the chance to rebuild the business. We'll support you, Jason, so please come back. I agreed and took on the role of CEO. Inspired by their zeal and the prospect of starting the business over from scratch, I created a new structure and updated the company's management policies, taking into account the feedback from the staff. I was able to improve the work atmosphere and conditions that had previously caused dissatisfaction by using my expertise as a former employee. The outcome was a far more comfortable workplace than it had been. I have a lot of pressure now that I am the CEO, since I know that my leadership will determine the fate of the staff. That being said, I lead a solid team, and the company succeeds because of its workers. I am not able to make money on my own. I'm appreciative of their confidence and encouragement, and I'm committed to raising our game. After that, there was a significant reorganization, and we advertised job positions to add personnel to departments that were short-staffed. We started interviewing the many experienced individuals who came through the recruitment process. While the CEO, the HR manager came up to me while I was waiting for the last round of interviews. His face was expressionless as he handed me a CV. The moment I saw that, I started giggling. "This is J. James Smith," I uttered. James Smith's name and photo were written on the application. James had applied to return to the organization after being sacked. He ought to have been disqualified in the first screening due to his terrible reputation, but he managed to get through by accident. As soon as I was asked what to do, I gave the command, "Get rid of him." He no longer belonged here, and I'm not sure why he believed he could return to the company he was expelled from. I was hoping he would give up and find work elsewhere. I had just finished my day's interviews and was heading back to the CEO's office when an employee barged in. "It's urgent, Jason. James is attempting to barge in." "How come?" It appeared as though he had returned after being sent away. I went to where he was before things got out of hand. James and a few staff members were fighting when I got to the door. "Permit me to enter. I used to be the CEO." I urged, "Please leave," observing the staff members straining to manage him. I intervened by speaking up. "James, please calm down. What prompted you to attend the interview?" "I'd want to resume my duties as CEO even if I was sacked. Though it didn't go well the last time, I'll win back everyone's confidence this time." I smiled sardonically as I looked from employee to employee, taking note of James's commitment. James murmured, "Wait a minute," as he glanced at me in confusion. "Williams, I thought I fired you. Why are you in this place?" Now that he was more at ease, he appeared perplexed by my presence. And Staffer raised his voice on my behalf, obviously irritated. "You're being disrespectful to President Williams." "President Williams?" James looked at me many times, blinking in surprise. After giving him a kind grin, I said, "Yes, I've been reinstated as the new CEO after you." James took a step back, appearing deceived by his old associates. Are you going to be the CEO again? You ought to abandon that notion. It was unexpectedly thrilling to see the man who had denigrated me seem shocked. You're not hired, but I wish you success elsewhere. James clung to me, nearly crying, even after I told him to get out of the entrance. Jason, please help me. I have nowhere to go. I'll work in sales or administration. Simply employ me. Even a copier is above your capabilities. You disturb the workplace and treat people with contempt. Who would employ such a person? Now go. I spoke out and dialed security. Hold on. I was in error. Please pardon me. James sobbed and pleaded for mercy, but he was let out by security officers. He then attended many interviews but was turned down each time. He now works day jobs to support himself. Despite having some assets as the vice president, his wife took more than half of his assets as alimony and filed for divorce once he was sacked. His savings are therefore almost completely depleted, and he must quickly find a better-paying job to avoid his lifestyle collapsing. Even now, he consistently gets fired for being careless while no one is looking. After he ultimately faced the repercussions of always pushing work onto others, he probably thought, if only I had worked more seriously, this wouldn't have happened. It's too late to realize his foolishness as he approaches retirement age. However, since beginning the new business, I have performed better and have been successful in opening a branch office. In addition, after moving up from engineering to CEO, business magazines began interviewing me. My reputation grew over time in this way, and we added more business partners. We eventually joined the ranks of huge organizations after seeing the potential for international expansion and ceasing to operate as a small to medium-sized company. I keep putting in a lot of effort for the coworkers